Hello, and welcome to the first ever Globe Craft Club. I'm Jana Pruden. I'm a reporter at the Globe and Mail. I normally write about crime and I write long features. So this is a little bit of something different for me. And actually, it's an experiment for all of us. We're figuring out the technology a little bit and we're on an adventure. So thank you so much for joining us. And I really do invite you, because this is an experiment, to share your suggestions, your feedback. You can find us in the Facebook group. You can also email me, jpruden@globeandmail.com, if you have any thoughts about how things are going, about crafts you'd like to see in this series, or anything else. You can also, of course, share your creations, your successes, and even if you have failures, which hopefully you won't, on Twitter and on Instagram with the hashtag #GlobeCraftClub. And if you haven't yet joined our Facebook page, it is also called Globe Craft Club, where you can meet other crafters, share ideas, share projects that you're working on as part of the club and overall. Our class today is going to be about an hour, and we are going to learn how to make crackers and cheese with my friend Cindy Lazarenko. Cindy is a very well-known chef and sort of person on the food scene in Edmonton. She's a huge advocate for local restaurants, local food, and also cooking and eating wonderful food at home. And I actually met Cindy at a craft fair when I was selling my embroidery, and I happened to be sitting back to back with her husband, Jeff Lilge, who's a designer. If you had a curvy looking CD case in the 90s, that may have been one of Jeff's designs, or a knockoff of his design, which is the one that I had. And actually we're using this, this is a Jeffrey Lilge cutting board, which of course has been well used, well loved, maybe not as cared for as it should have been. So there's another one of his creations. So hello, Cindy, it's so wonderful to see you.
Hi, Jana. Nice to cook with you again. This is our second time this week, which we never work together, but 2 times a week. I'm a lucky lady.
Yes, me too. It's been, you know, a difficult time, as we all know, and it actually is pretty wonderful to connect with friends at a distance, even if we might like to see them in person. So how do we get started here?
Well, I think everyone has a list of the ingredients, and you've separated the ingredients between the crackers and the ricotta. And I'll go through it very slowly. I'll tell everyone the measurements as we go. We're going to start with the crackers. And then once the crackers are in the oven baking, we're going to move over. I'm actually going to have to lift up my laptop and move it over to the stove so it's closer to the stove. And we'll make the ricotta. And then as the crackers are baking, we'll bring that together. And then we'll put our ricotta aside. We'll bring the crackers back out. Yes, you can half the recipe, Mary, for sure. We'll bring the crackers out, and I just want to say that it does make a lot of crackers. Like for me, I like to use this loaf pan. It's like a mini muffin loaf pan, or a mini loaf pan. And so I like the shape of the crackers. They're more like those Leslie Stowe crackers that we see in the grocery stores all the time. But you can definitely just use 2 loaf pans. That's fine, because what happens is the batter goes into 2 loaf pans, so it's not going to be really high. So the crackers will be about, you know, like that, and then longer, which is really nice too on a cheese board, because it's always nice to have different shapes of crackers and things on a cheese board. So that being said, once you bake your 2 loaves, typically we let it kind of cool, and even putting it in the refrigerator, or even making the crackers the next day. But today it's possible to do it right after. It just is easier to cut if the loaf is cool. But we're going to do it anyways. You could hold off if you want, if you feel like you don't want to attempt cutting a warm loaf. And what else was I going to say about that? What I sometimes do is tuck, like if I'm making 8 of these, I'll sometimes just tuck these loaves whole into the freezer. And so sometimes if I just pull one of these out of the freezer, let it thaw, then slice it and bake them. I have crackers anytime. I can just pull these little loaves out whenever I want a few crackers for my cheese board. So you could put one of those loaves that you're making into the freezer for another day, unless you plan on eating a lot of crackers in the next little while. Or maybe you want to share them. They're really a nice gift cracker. And these are so easy to make. I'm sure we've all seen those Leslie Stowe crackers. There's other brand names out there. I think Western Family has a similar cracker, and they're usually about like $6, $7, $8 for a box. So these make a ton of crackers. I have to say too, I've been making these for a long time, like many years. And I was trying to think back to where did I get this recipe from? And I do want to give credit. I got the recipe from Julie Van Rosendahl. She's from Calgary. Maybe Julie's online, who knows? But her handle is Dinner with Julie. And she's, lots of people know who she is. She's a wonderful cook and has a blog, and she's on all the social media platforms. So that's where I got the recipe from. And yeah, let's begin. Are there any questions before we get going, Jana?
No, I don't think so. And you did take that question from Mary, and so that's just a reminder for everybody. This is interactive, and we will do our best. If you have questions, if you want us to slow down, if there's other things you want to talk about. I mean, one of the things I always find really great about making things and making things with friends is just spending some time together, doing something productive and delicious.
Yeah, excellent. And I've got my oven on too. So everyone that's cooking along, turn your oven on to 350, get your oven warmed up, and let's start. I think we're good. And so what I'm going to do here is just turn my screen down so you can see my board as well, okay? So this is my large bowl, and I've got 2 cups of all-purpose flour. Some of you might ask if we could use a different kind of flour. I believe I have used several different kinds of flours over the years. A spelt flour. You could even, if you had whole wheat and you want to use some of it up, you could even maybe do half and half. I maybe wouldn't recommend using all whole wheat. They might not stay together as nicely. They might be a little bit harder to cut, but definitely feel free to play around with flours. So I'm just kind of stirring it to get all the lumps out. And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of baking soda, not baking powder, baking soda. Throw that in.
So Cindy will know this. I'm not much of a baker. And I'm also, I'm not that kind of cook that has everything set, everything measured out ahead of time. So I'm going to be flying blind here a little bit. You said 2 teaspoons, Cindy?
Yeah, 2 teaspoons of baking soda. And what we call that, I do have all my ingredients measured out. I pulled everything out, of course. And what we call that in the restaurant biz is mise en place. So it might sound like a sort of fancy French cooking term, but trust me, if you work in a restaurant, everybody uses that term mise en place. What it means is basically to have everything in its place. And it's a really good habit to get into because, sometimes we've all done that where we're halfway through and we realize we don't have that key ingredient. And it doesn't necessarily mean you have to have everything measured out, but at least pull out your ingredients, pull out your measuring cups, pull out your spoons. That's your mise en place, okay? It's just like a cooking show. If you ever watch those cooking shows, everything's all tickety-boo. So yeah, everybody's got their baking soda. Then the next simple ingredient is half a teaspoon of salt. I'm a big fan of the kosher salt, but any table salt, whatever you have on hand is fine.
And Cindy, I see a question here about substituting the grain, and from someone who uses spelt, einkorn, or rye. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, I just mentioned that at the beginning. Feel free to play around. If you're familiar with using those flours, the only thing I would say, if you were to substitute all whole wheat flour, it might affect sort of the grain of the loaf, and they might fall apart when you're slicing them. I mean, maybe not, but what I sometimes do with my whole grain flours is I sift the whole grain. I sift out all the germ and the bran that kind of comes with it, just to be on the safe side. But what I would do also, I've used spelt flour. I definitely remember using spelt flour in the past, and that one worked fine. Just looking up at my pantry here, I've got a stone milled red Fife flour. I would be a little bit leery of using, it's a pretty grainy flour. It's got a very different consistency. So what I might do is take a cup of that red Fife flour and add it to a cup of the all-purpose flour. Does that make sense? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah, it does to me.
Okay. So yeah.
Should I still be stirring? I'm just sitting here daydreaming at this point.
Have you added your salt?
I did add the salt.
Okay, so baking soda, salt, that's good. Now we're going to add our wheat germ. No, sorry, not wheat germ. You could add wheat germ though. If you didn't have the ground flaxseed, you definitely could add wheat germ. And not whole flaxseed. If you add, I mean, you could add whole flaxseed, because when it comes to the pecans and the pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds, you definitely can throw in the whole flax seeds for that. But for this, we want this to be ground, okay? So that is a 1/4 cup of flaxseed. And then we've got a 1/4 cup of honey, sorry, brown sugar, looking at the honey. And then just give that a quick little stir. Okay, dry ingredients all mixed up. And then we're gonna add our honey, which is a 1/4 cup, and our buttermilk, which is 2 cups. So if you have, my honey was, it's not a liquid honey, so I did have to melt the honey in the microwave first, and you want to make sure you do that, otherwise you're going to have clumps of honey everywhere. Okay, so make sure it's a nice liquid honey, about a 1/4 cup. And
I'm already running behind here, Cindy. Because my honey is it's chunky, and I don't have a microwave, so I might have to throw it in the oven for a minute.
do you have a little, can you just put it on the stovetop?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, put it on the stovetop. It won't take long. You have a little sauce pot. Is there another comment? I have my computer down, so I can't see the comments, but I thought I saw something pop up.
It was a comment for me to move my bowl, so I've done it.
Okay. So as we're waiting for Jana to heat up her honey, I'll go slow. So I've got a 1/4 cup of honey, and a 1/4 cup of brown sugar is in here. And so these crackers do tend to be not super sweet, but slightly on the sweeter side. So you could even cut down on that, but I would make them, you know, follow the recipe, follow along. And then if you make them again, you can always either delete the honey or delete the brown sugar if you find them too sweet, or half it, put a couple tablespoons of each. Does that make sense?
I see a question as my honey is heating up about, this is from Maria, and she's asking if she can use a silicone pan.
For baking them in?
Yes.
For sure.
I assume?
Oh yeah, I think so. I never have ever baked in silicone. But yeah, I'm sure if you usually bake breads and stuff in your silicone, it's totally fine. Yeah, and it's kind of like making biscotti. If any of you have ever made biscotti, and biscotti basically means twice baked. And that's what we're doing. We're making a loaf, cooling it, slicing it, and baking it again. And that's how you get them really crispy. And that's why biscotti is so crispy, because you're baking them twice. And then the other thing that I want to mention is that you can, I mean, just like those Leslie Stowe crackers, if you go into the grocery store, if you Google them, you're going to see all kinds of different types and flavors. So for this, for this recipe, we're using the pecans, but you could literally use any nut that you like. You can use any seed that you like. You can use pumpkin seeds, sunflower seeds. It's really quite forgiving, okay?
So are you just then watching what the total amount is and making sure that your total amount of seeds is right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So that's good because I don't have pecans. I had walnuts and pumpkin seeds and sesame seeds.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, perfect. I didn't have pumpkin seeds earlier, but I have them now. And so I was going to just substitute the pumpkin seeds with sunflower seeds and flaxseed. You could use hemp seeds if you wanted. I really like the pumpkin seeds because it gives the cracker a nice color, the nice green pumpkin seeds. And then we're adding 1 cup of raisins. So you could substitute with, let's say all you had was a bag of dried apricots, then just chop those up to equal 1 cup. You could use cranberries, you could use dates, you could use anything. And then at the end, it says finely chopped rosemary. So you could use fresh thyme if you wanted, or sage, like really whatever you think goes well together. Go for it. I love
so people who know me know I'm sort of anti-raisin, except in butter tarts. So I don't have any raisins or dried fruit that I'm putting in.
Right. That's okay.
And do you think like my honey, okay, I guess it's softening up a little bit, but it's still not looking great.
You know what?
Is there an
delete the honey. Just omit it because I think you're going to find these sweet enough anyways. So just add the 1/4 cup of brown sugar.
Okay.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Okay. And I see a question from Susan Hart about using gluten-free flour. Can she use gluten-free flour?
Yeah, I think if you're using that, what's it called, like cup to cup or something, because this is such a basic recipe, it's really quite a forgiving recipe. I would feel, I never have made it with gluten-free flour, but I would feel quite confident in saying it would work just fine. If you use it for muffins, it'll work. If you use it for cookies, it'll work. Okay. All right. So we've ready to move on with the buttermilk. Okay.
Okay. So I haven't put my seeds in.
No, that's okay.
I should be doing that right now, right?
We were waiting for you to melt your honey, Jana. So now add your butter.
Everyone can see that this is not a, slick cooking show. Here I am running behind. Well, my honey's a little melted. Maybe I'll put, so can you see it there? Does it, is that okay?
As long as it, let's see. Can you show me again?
Yeah, I would say it's liquid-ish.
It looks kind of clumpy. I would not.
Okay.
Otherwise, you're going to just get big clumps of honey in it. And trust me, I know that because I was too lazy to melt my honey one time, and I just threw it in, and it totally clumped up. Trust me, I know. All right, so now we've got our ready to add your buttermilk?
Yeah, so as I stall you to put my seeds in, we have some questions. Can you use chia seeds for flax? And how about substituting maple syrup for honey? That's a great idea.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, you can absolutely put maple syrup. Good stuff. And I'm adding 1 cup of raisins to mine. Adding 1/2 cup of, just want to make sure, pumpkin seeds, 1/2 cup. Then I have black sesame and roasted sesame. So I think I'm just for something different, I'm going to add 1/4 cup of black sesame. Okay. And I think that's it. And then chopped pecans. And they don't have to be chopped too much because they are going to get sliced when you slice the cracker. So just like that. Just a nice rough chop, okay?
Okay.
In they go.
And the buttermilk.
Yeah, and the buttermilk. And I'll tell everyone just a little tip if you don't have buttermilk. I know many people know this trick already, but it's, for every 1 cup of buttermilk, you can add a teaspoon of vinegar and then just let it hang out for a bit. And eventually the vinegar will kind of curdle the milk a bit. And it's just going to give it a bit of a tang. And that's what we love with buttermilk. And I'm using a full fat buttermilk, but you can definitely just use, I think it comes as 1% as well. So that's fine. And I would even assume that I always use buttermilk, but I'm sure you could just use plain milk too. That would be fine.
Here's a question from M. Collins asking, can we use half and half instead of milk?
Half and half. I think so. Yeah, I think so. If that's all you had and you wanted to just maybe water it down a little bit, like how much milk does it call? 2 cups. Let's say if you used 1 cup of half and half, or a cup and a half of half and half, and then just add water to it just to thin it out a little bit.
So I feel like there's lots of amazing bakers in this group, and I actually know a lot of amazing bakers, so it's a little bit nerve-wracking doing my haphazard baking here in front of people. Please don't judge me, everyone.
I don't think anyone's judging. So I know how much? 1 tablespoon of fresh rosemary.
So is that about 1 sprig or 2 sprigs?
Yeah, I just pulled off, I'm going to say 1 sprig. Like, I mean, some sprigs are really long, but the other thing too, if you don't love rosemary, just go easy on it. You don't have to put a whole tablespoon in. You could just put a teaspoon in if you wanted. You could use dried rosemary, but it's not going to be as flavorful. And it might seem kind of weird to put fresh rosemary in this, but rosemary with anything sweet is absolutely delicious. I don't care for rosemary, like, you know, sometimes you see those rosemary covered chickens. Like, I find it quite a strong herb. I like it, but sometimes it's just overdone in savory dishes or with focaccia. But I'm telling you, if you use rosemary, I make rosemary shortbread at Christmas time, rosemary creme brulee. I think you'll really love, even if you don't think you love rosemary, I think you'll really love it in these crackers. It's so, so delicious because the crackers are kind of sweet.
And then am I just cutting it up into little pieces?
The rosemary, yeah. So
yeah.
You're going to really finely chop that. You don't want big.
So we're getting some questions to repeat the measurements for nuts and seeds.
Yes. Okay. So 1 cup of raisins or any dried fruit, half a cup of chopped pecans or any nut, a half a cup of pumpkin seeds, more or less. If you only had a 1/4 cup of pumpkin seeds, that's fine. It's really fine. A 1/4 cup of sesame seeds or any seed, hemp seed, chia seeds, whatever you have, flax seeds, and then a 1/4 cup of the ground flaxseed.
So between the raisins or dried fruit and the nuts, that's about, and the ground flaxseed, that would be 2.5 cups. So is it really up to, like, do you think it would work if people just fill 2.5 cups with whatever nuts and seeds that they would like?
Yeah, for sure. And it could be even 2 cups. Like, I think if you're short on some of those ingredients, it's really fine.
And then we do have a question, can I use flour if I don't have ground flax?
You mean just adding a bit more flour? I think, do you have bran? Do you have, if you have ground, bran, or even if you had, what else? Maybe ground almond flour, but I wouldn't add any more flour.
So something that's more
like a 1/4 cup. I would just omit it instead of adding extra flour.
Right. So something that's more like of a grittier ground seed or nut would be better than just adding flour.
Exactly. I mean, I'm sure you could. I'm sure it would be fine, but I don't know for sure. But like, one thing is the batter itself is the flour, the baking soda, the salt, and the buttermilk. So you kind of don't really want to mess around with that base too much. But again, that being said, it's only a 1/4 cup, so I'm sure if you just added a bit more flour, it would be fine. And I'm sure if you omitted it, it would be fine.
So I've basically put in, I put in the walnuts, pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, and flaxseed. I didn't add any raisins at all, and that should be fine. Like do you think?
Yeah, that'll be fine.
Okay.
Yeah, totally.
Some people asking whether they can use yogurt instead of buttermilk and how much buttermilk. So that's 2 cups of buttermilk. I can answer that. And what do you think about substituting yogurt for buttermilk, Cindy?
Yeah, I would take like a cup of yogurt and then just add water to it and turn it into sort of a buttermilk. Okay, that's what I would do, especially if it's a full fat yogurt.
Right. Yeah. Because of the textural thing, it's going to be too heavy.
Turn yogurt into buttermilk. That's a really good question. I actually even thought of that because I have yogurt here that I want to use up. So I have a very finely minced rosemary. And I'll just give you a quick little tip on knife skills for those of you that are beginner cooks. So here's my knife. What you don't want to do, I just want to make sure you have a good view. What you don't want to do is hold your knife back here. You want to kind of cinch up, and it's called the, like pinch it. So you're actually pinching the blade. So I have my finger on the blade and I have my thumb on the blade. So I'm pinching, okay? Is that a good view, Jana?
Yep.
See that? And then I don't have anything to actually cut, but if I was cutting, let's say I was cutting an onion or something, you want to do this sort of claw with your hand. So you don't want to, and I see this all the time, people cutting, even I see professionals, like I watch a lot of videos or they're holding it like this. Eventually, if that's how you cut, eventually you will cut the tip of your finger off, especially if you don't have a sharp knife. But if you hold your vegetable or whatever it is you're cutting with your fingers tucked in, and if your knife slips, like I can look at my computer right now, I'm not even looking, and I'm going to hit my knuckle before I hit the tip of my finger, okay? And then it's this rocking motion, so you'll notice my knife is never coming off the board. So if I was slicing, whatever parsley or something, or an onion, I would be slicing like that. When I'm mincing something like the rosemary, I always put my hand up like this. I don't hold on to the knife. I mean, I guess you could, but just keep my fingers sort of up and just back and forth. And see how I'm pinching the knife here? Okay, back and forth, bring it together.
It's my my goal to not cut off my finger or scald myself with hot milk on Facebook Live during our very first craft club. So,
and then just
throwing these into the batter then?
Yeah, throw it into the batter. Bring my batter back. Okay, now just give that a nice mix. And you don't want to over mix this, okay? If you over mix, and one time I was demonstrating this on an online cooking class, but I was talking and I wasn't paying attention and I was over mixing. So I actually brought them out of the oven and showed the class. So it's sort of like what not to do. But just like a muffin, if you over mix a muffin, so all my little muffin loaves all had a peak, right? And so you don't want that because then when you slice them, you're going to get funny little shapes. So just sort of fold everything in just until that flour has absorbed the liquid. And just try to, like sometimes I don't even really stir. I kind of just do this. I sort of just push everything down. And that's about it. Okay. Oh, I can still see, I can see a little bit of dry here. So just sort of without stirring, just kind of. Okay. And then, so if you're using 2 loaf pans, kind of just eyeball it and you're going to put into a spray it with a bit of baking spray or with a bit of oil with a paper towel, just so they pop out really easily. And then half of it goes in one and half of it goes in the other. Okay. And then we're just going to pop them in the oven. They're going to hang out in there for about half an hour. Okay.
So I have this really weird sort of double loaf pan that I bought at a thrift store because I loved it. And I never seem to have a use for it. It's so long. So I'm just sort of going to try 2 in 1 in here. Do you think that'll work?
Yeah, totally. Yep, just put all of it in there. Yep, that'll be great. And then what I like to do, because I'm using, I don't know if anybody else is using a little mini muffin loaf, but this is a nice tip if you're making muffins sometimes, is use a cookie scoop, or we always called these ice cream scoops growing up. We never knew they were actually supposed to be for baking or for cookies, but it just helps you measure the quantity that you're putting in so everything's nice and even. So I'm going to go around and do 1 scoop. I'm sort of heaping scoop. Then I can go around and do another, and then I kind of know that they're somewhat even.
Cindy, are you telling me that those are meant to be used for cookie batter?
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you.
Wow, I always thought they were for ice cream, and then they could do double duty for batter.
Right. So an ice cream scoop is, you know, like what they use in the, like this is that's an ice cream scoop. I mean, I know you know that's an ice cream scoop, but not ever, I don't think that's what they were meant for. And then if you're making cookies and you can get these in all different shapes. If you're making cookies, then that's how, like, especially with when we're catering, so that everything is consistent in size. You could even eat these, like they're so good. After they bake the first time, you could just eat one. Eat it like a muffin. They're really delicious.
Okay, so I'm about to throw mine in.
Okay.
I know I've been holding us up, and probably everyone is really anxious to get to the cheese, which is obviously the special guest and the star of this event.
Well, I don't have any idea how many people are watching, and I'm not sure I want to know. I'm just gonna pretend it's just you and me, Jana. And it would be impossible to go at a rate or at a speed that would be ideal for everybody. Impossible.
So, am I setting a timer for this?
Yeah, we're gonna put them in for about half an hour.
Okay.
Okay, I'm being really picky. Okay, that's good. Good. And I'm going to put mine in for a little bit less because I'm using a different kind of pan. It shouldn't take quite that long.
And the question is the temperature for the oven. It should be 350.
Yeah, 350.
Yeah.
So I just set mine for 15, and we'll check on them then.
I've made a massive mess already. I'm not a baker.
You make excellent pies.
Only doing my Martha Stewart phase. Question, do you need to grease your pans? Yes, I think so. Or with a spray if you have, whatever your preference is, I think, right, Cindy?
Yeah, or a little bit of vegetable oil, canola oil. Okay, is that good, Jana? You can see my...
Yep,
okay.
Looks great.
So I have a fairly, good sized stock pot. You want to use a big one because sometimes, like I have an even higher one, but it would be too high for the view, I think. And but it's nice to have an even higher pot than this, just in case it boils over, which sometimes, and I'll remind everyone not to walk away from it, but it sometimes does boil over, okay? So if you have a really high pot, like a stock pot or like a pasta pot, then use that if you can.
And apologies for the Blair Witch style cinematography that I'm doing. I'm just setting up my pot.
So, and I'm turning the heat on to medium. Get that going. And then I'm also using goat milk for mine. I really love the flavor of ricotta when you use goat milk. But feel free to use, I think it even says, I think the ingredient list said whole milk or goat milk. When I make ricotta, I almost always use goat milk.
And are we putting in the full, is it 2 liters of milk?
Yes, yeah, 2 liters of milk. Yeah.
Okay.
2 liters of milk. And I'm going to try really hard to follow the recipe because I've made this so many times. I don't actually follow a recipe. Like I will sometimes just grab whatever milks I have if I want ricotta. So let's say I have 2% and I have some half and half and I have whipping cream. I think even one time I had some kind of kefir, like a kefir yogurt drink, and I put that in there one time. So again, a bit forgiving. But for, your first few times, follow the recipe until you get the good hang of it. And then 1 cup of plain yogurt. Make sure it's not vanilla.
And we're just throwing it in as we go.
Yep. As the milk's heating up. And I've got homemade yogurt here. I have to tell everyone. If you have an Instant Pot at home, I didn't even see the yogurt button on my Instant Pot. I've had it for 2 years. I've never noticed. You can make yogurt in your Instant Pot, and it's so easy. And I won't go on and on about it, but I just thought people should know that. And I make it all the time now. I never buy store-bought yogurt anymore. It's so delicious.
So we have 2 liters of milk, and then I'm putting in 1 cup of yogurt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so you can use a lower fat content yogurt, high fat, doesn't matter. But just know that your yogurt, your ricotta, will either be really rich or not.
A question from Elizabeth Thompson. Can you use lactose-free milk?
You know what? That came up, and I was actually going to test that, and I haven't yet, but that's a really good question. And I think so, but I don't know for sure. I have never tried it with lactose-free milk, lactose-free milk. But I think that, like, you're adding the vinegar, and the vinegar will still curdle the lactose-free milk. Who's asking that? Is that the only milk you have, or are you just asking out of curiosity? I'm not sure who asked that question.
Yeah, that's Elizabeth Thompson. So maybe if you want to respond, Elizabeth, let us know if that's what you have, or you're just wondering that in general. And Cindy Spong asked for the cheese. Can 1 cup of 4% milk be exchanged with 1 cup of 10% cream?
Sorry, 1 cup of 4% milk?
Yeah.
Be exchanged
with 1 cup of 10% cream.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine. And the cream in this recipe is optional. I don't always add it, but I am today because I just want a really rich, creamy ricotta.
And so we have, what should our stove be on? I have mine right at medium, but where should I be?
Yeah, you have, put it at medium and get it going. I mean, everybody has a different stove. Like this, now that you mention it, I should turn mine down because this particular burner, I have a gas stove, is a really high BTU. And so I'm going to actually turn mine down because you don't want to heat this milk up too quickly. It's just nice and slow. I mean, not too slow. You don't want to have it on low. We don't want to be standing here for an hour waiting for it to come to a boil. But you don't want it to boil in 3 minutes, which if I turn this heat up, it would. It's such a high BTU. So just sort of, your stove, whatever you think is sort of a medium heat with that much liquid. I'd say we're looking for it to come to a boil in about maybe, I've never actually timed it. I should time it. Maybe 7 to 10 minutes, I'm going to guess.
Okay. And so right now I just have my milk and my yogurt.
Yeah.
A question from Anna Valentino asked if you can use Greek yogurt. I hope so, because that's what I used.
Yes.
So okay. Yeah. And then what else needs to go in right now?
Okay, and then a teaspoon of salt.
Okay.
And then we're going to add 2 teaspoons of vinegar. And so I've done this online quite a bit. Someone corrected it and said you weren't supposed to add the vinegar until after the cream has come to a boil, but I've always added it right away, and I always have been successful making ricotta. But maybe if you've made it before, you might think that seems a bit odd that I'm adding it right now.
But okay, we're adding 2 teaspoons of white vinegar.
Yes, and 1 teaspoon of salt.
Okay. I have a little bit of curdle anxiety. Like, what if my cheese doesn't curdle here on Facebook Live?
Well, I have curdle anxiety every single time I make it. Every single time. And I think the only time my ricotta didn't work out was the very first time I made it, and I was in the restaurant kitchen, and I was probably doing 5 other things, and it boiled over, and I just was like, that's it. Oh, I'm not making ricotta. I just gave up. And then, you know, I kind of was like, okay, let's try this again. And it's never not worked out. One time it didn't look like it was going to curdle, and so I did add a little bit more vinegar, and I can actually remember this. Like, I'm not making this up. I remember that one time I made it where I remember where I was when I had to add a bit more vinegar. What was I going to say? That being said, oh, I know. So when I did this online in December, and I had about 35 people online with me making the ricotta, lots of people were getting frustrated, and not frustrated, but just sort of like, you know, panicking or thinking that it wasn't going to curdle. And sometimes it'll be very obvious that it's curdling, and sometimes it won't. Sometimes you're stirring and it just doesn't look like anything is happening. And then when you go to strain it, there's your curds. So just know that. And there's so many people on. I'm not even sure how many people are cooking along with us, but I'm like, it's never not worked. And then at the end of the day, those 35 people, some of them, it took quite a long time for the milk to curdle. But again, one woman was in Canmore, and it took a really long time to curdle. And she ended up messaging us after and saying it worked. But we were already offline, and it came up. I don't know if this is a thing, but she was in the mountains, and so someone asked, "Is the altitude, would that affect it?" Right? And so if we have people like from all over, and then I'm like, no, not the altitude. That wouldn't have any, like, that wouldn't make a difference whether or not something curdled. And sure enough, someone looked it up, and apparently it can happen. It does have an effect. And so I'm not a master cheesemaker, by the way. The only cheese I know how to make is ricotta and paneer, just the fresh, the easy cheeses. But I certainly, yeah. That's it for me.
So just to sort of sum up where we are in the process, if anyone's joined us late, we have the crackers in the oven right now, baking for half an hour, and we're currently just waiting for the milk to come to a boil. We have milk and yogurt and salt and white vinegar in here. And the recipes and full amounts will be posted on the Globe website, and we'll throw a link into the Facebook page as well. So, you know, it's sometimes hard to keep up as we're going through, but there are places to find these recipes after, for sure.
Great. So I can see my milk steaming. It's definitely heating up. I'm stirring it. You don't have to, but I like it. And, you know, I'm just hanging out here talking to everyone, so I may as well. But what's happening is the milk and basically the curds in the whey is water, and they're going to separate. And so there's no real risk of it burning because the curds kind of float to the top. But I like to just sort of think that I have to stir it so that I don't walk away and go like do some dishes or empty the dishwasher. So I just kind of tell myself that it needs to be stirred constantly, because what I don't want to happen is I don't want it to boil over.
I'm pretty sure this pot that I'm using was permanently scorched once warming up milk, so I'm a little bit careful about that as well.
Yeah, so just hang out. There's nothing else to do. Just hang out. I'll tell you a few things that I love to use ricotta with. So I love to use it obviously on a cheese board, and I'm going to show you maybe if we have time after. I've got this little sample of friends of mine own Beaver Creek honey, And this is a poblano, so it's got a bit of spice to it, but it's smoked honey. If you can get your hands on some smoked honey, oh my goodness, and get a cracker, a baguette, or a crostini, put the ricotta on your on the piece, and then drizzle it with smoked honey, or even just regular honey. That is just so simple and delicious, just like that. A friend over Christmas gave me a jar of, oh, where is that? It's a flour, like peony. I think it was peony jelly, some kind of flour. And it was clear in color. And I posted it actually on Instagram. It's with the ricotta. So just this beautiful jelly. It just was so, so lovely. The other thing that you can do is once you've made the ricotta, you can add some chilies to it, zest in some lemon, a little bit of Malden sea salt, and then just some olive oil. And that's just a really basic way to serve it on a crostini as well. So delicious, so nice and lemony.
I have moved my heat up to sort of medium high. My stove isn't always the hottest, so and it felt like it was not warming up very quickly.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've moved mine up. Is there anything that we should be prepping with the cheesecloth or anything while this is heating up?
Yeah, and I use, I actually don't have any cheesecloth left because I've made this so many times over Christmas online. But I have a really, I don't know if you can see how fine that is, but it's a strainer that has a very fine mesh. And so this will be fine for straining. I like using the cheesecloth because then I can pick it up after and squeeze it and stuff, but I'm not worried about that. So if you do have a cheesecloth, just cut out a piece that's quite a bit bigger than the strainer that you're using. And sort of let it hang over so that you can gather it and maybe squeeze it if you want. And then I always use this pot. It's nice and deep. This is out of my Instant Pot. So I just grab that. But any kind of deep bowl, because all the whey is going to end up in there. And then that being said, sometimes I really don't like wasting food and I don't like wasting the whey. So if you want to keep the whey after you've drained it, don't throw it down the sink. You can use it. You can make pancakes with it instead of milk. You can add it to your soup. You could add it to your morning smoothies if you want. So yeah, make sure you use it if you don't want to waste the whey.
And if someone didn't have a really fine strainer or cheesecloth, is there something else they could use? Could you use a clean dish towel or something, do you think? Or
I would say maybe a coffee filter would work. There's so many different kinds of coffee filters though. Like for example, some of them are really quite thick and it might take a while for that liquid to come through. But if you just have like a regular old basket type of coffee filter, and that being said, you could even use a piece of paper towel. But some of that really, I know one lady was using paper towel, but I think like she had that thick, Bounty, the quicker picker upper or something. And it took a long time to strain. I mean, eventually it will, but so just know that it might not happen as fast as mine. That's a good question.
Sorry?
That was a really good question.
Kate Pierce asked, can you use a metal pan rather than cast iron?
Yes, absolutely. Yep. Stainless steel. Absolutely. And then what's going to happen here, I don't know where everybody's at with this, but there might be some people who are like, oh, I think it's curdling already. So I'll just kind of tell you and then I can repeat it. But it kind of goes a tinge of a yellow color. And then you can sort of see it changes consistency. And sometimes you can see little curds. Sometimes the curds kind of hang out on the sides. So just keep stirring, see what's happening. Kind of pick it up. Sometimes I pick it up and I can see the little curds happening, but I'm not quite there yet. I
feel like I am getting some chunks, but I'm not sure if it's maybe just sort of yogurt chunks hanging out or if it's...
Right. It could be yogurt chunks.
I definitely can, it's getting frothy, and I can definitely tell it's hotter on the bottom.
Yeah. Has yours turned color at all, Jana?
I think so, but maybe that's just wishful thinking.
Like I can tell mine's really pale, starting to turn a bit yellow.
Here's a question from Ilona Biro about where I got my apron. Thank you. This is one of my favorite aprons. I'm a big apron person. I always wear an apron when I'm cooking. And this comes from my friend Lisa's store in Regina called Seed Sustainable Style. And she sources Canadian designers and designers who use environmentally sustainable fabrics. And maybe look up the tag after and tell you exactly who's made this, but this is one of my favorite aprons. I've sometimes been tempted to wear it almost as a skirt, I guess, if it didn't have the opening at the back.
With some leggings, Jana, and your steps.
Exactly.
Jana, can you send me that link? Or you should send everybody that link.
Yeah, I absolutely will. Heather Ferguson asks, I've seen ricotta recipes using lemon juice. Could it be substitute for the vinegar?
Yes, good question. Yes, it definitely can.
And the same amounts?
Yep, same amount.
And Valerie Waddy is asking, and I'm totally apologize if I'm pronouncing anyone's names wrong. How about a muslin cloth for the cheesecloth?
Yeah, I think so. I was thinking of muslin. I've never used it. I think so. Yeah, should work.
So Cindy, something exciting is happening to mine. I think maybe I'm getting curds. What should I be doing? Oh, and I see Larry's having the same thing. Once you have
okay, so that's great. So if you are at that point where you've got some curds happening, that's okay. Just let it boil without, like, turn the heat down if you think it's going to boil over, but let it kind of get to a rolling boil for about 2 minutes. Okay. And then you're just going to turn your heat off. And at that point, if we're not ready, if we're behind where you're at, just let it hang out. It's all good. You don't have to, it's not like you have to strain it like right away.
Okay.
You could even let it hang out there in the pot for an hour before you strained it. Okay, does that make sense?
And it should definitely be simmering, is that correct?
Yeah, yeah. One time I even used apple cider vinegar. I didn't have any white vinegar, and that worked as well. Apple cider vinegar was fine.
Did it affect the taste, Cindy?
No.
Daryl is asking, single layer cheesecloth?
Yes, single layered, yes.
Oh, really? Okay.
I meant to mention that. Just one layer is all you need. I mean, if you put 2 down, it's fine. It'll just take a little bit longer to strain through. So satisfying, I find. Just back and forth. I should take a picture of this.
Just stir your troubles away. We could pretend that was a pun on the word way, although it was totally unintentional. We'll pretend it was on purpose.
Risotto is another really nice one to make. It's a lot of stirring.
So Cindy, can you look at mine? Do you have any thoughts on what's happening here?
Oh, looks good, Jana. Don't let it boil over, but yeah, it's bubbling. And how long has it been bubbling?
Well, just is starting to simmer.
Yeah.
So
2 minutes.
Okay.
See mine? Okay, look at mine here. It's definitely, I'm gonna turn that heat down. So my pot's not very. So mine's starting to bubble. See that? It's kind of like the really big bubble. So it's almost like, I don't know how good this is coming in on camera, but it's definitely bubbling. And I definitely see curds. See? Am I showing that spoon?
Oh,
Can you see my curds? Yeah.
Oh yeah, actually I can see that with mine now too. When I pick up the spoon, you can see that it's definitely kind of clotting in there.
And I think for those of you, like, what should we say? Like, if there might be some that are having a harder time getting it to curdle, even if you put a little bit, let's just try this. You know, if you put it into your strainer, your cheesecloth, maybe more than what I just put in, like a ladle, and then maybe then you'll be able to see your curds, because sometimes you just can't see it. Just kind of looks thick, and you just
So it seems like people are curdling. They're definitely curdling. So if they're curdling, turn off the heat.
Yeah, after you've let it boil for 2
Yeah.
minutes, then just turn the heat off.
Okay. And you said 2 minutes, and then we're gonna strain it.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and it sounds like, just to reiterate what you said earlier, that's not a hard 2 minutes, because of course I forgot to time it.
Yeah.
So how do I know when to drain it? Just give it another minute or so?
Yeah, I'd say you're probably there, Jana.
Yeah. And should I be checking my crackers? Definitely smells.
My timer just went off, and I had my timer on only for 15 minutes, so you should be good, Jana, for a bit. Okay. I'm telling everyone to put their crackers in for 30 minutes, but you guys probably all have bigger pans than I do. But go ahead and check them. Like, they should be nice and golden brown. Like, not even golden brown, I would say kind of more towards a dark golden brown. And I'll pull mine out and show everyone.
Okay, so I'm going to pull mine out as well, and then I guess I'm going to drain my cheese momentarily.
And then be careful when you're draining it. You know, if you pick up this pot and just start pouring, you're probably going to get some spillage. So either do it by your sink, or even take some kind of like a measuring cup or something. And if you're going to do it on your stove, here, I'll just demonstrate.
So this definitely doesn't look to me like this is done, these crackers.
No, okay, yeah, yours probably won't be.
Okay. I'm going to throw them back in for another 15 or so, and we won't keep people the whole time. We'll let them go at some point, but I'm going to throw these back in.
Yeah, and just put them in for another 10 minutes, Jana.
Okay. I promise I'm going to watch the clock this time.
When you put your crackers in, you didn't set your timer?
No, it's nerve-wracking to be cooking in front of people on Facebook Live. Is this bowl, do you think, going to be big enough for the amount of liquid, or should I have a pot like you have?
I can't see it. I can't see how high it is. It looks like it's fine.
Yeah.
I mean,
okay.
Yeah. So just think about how much milk you put in, and you're going to get a couple of cups of curd.
Okay.
So can you see what I'm doing here?
Yes.
Okay. Just to avoid sort of picking the pot up and pouring it in and then spilling, and just scooping it out this way. I just don't want anybody to burn themselves or make a big mess.
So this is the part where I don't burn myself on scalded milk.
Yes.
Oh,
I've got your back, Jana. And then, so my strainer actually isn't that big, so I'm going to just hold off now because I can't fit anymore. And last time I did this, I said, I got to buy a bigger strainer. I either have one that's really small. I need a little bit bigger than that one.
Okay, so I'm making a bit of a mess, but this is working. I think I'm going to try pouring a bit. I've got my, let's just see how this works.
I'm just going to move my computer back to my cutting board.
Okay. So I don't know if people can see that, but this is really looking like ricotta already.
I am so happy to hear that. So I'll show everyone my ricotta after I finish draining it, but hopefully everybody's having some good success.
So if people do not have curdles yet, which some people may not, what should they be doing? Should they be panicking? Should they be
Well, if you don't have curdles or you don't think you have curdles, it has come to a boil, then just add another teaspoon of vinegar and see what happens. Sometimes that's all it takes, curdles. Or just try scooping some of it into your strainer to see if in fact there actually is curds, but you just can't really see them. I'm going to show you see how nice and dark golden brown my loaves are. Okay, so that's kind of the consistency that you want.
So how firm should the cracker batter be? That's a question coming from Rebecca. How do we know when they're done? You said dark brown, and are we testing for firmness as well?
Yeah, you can. I never do because I can just kind of tell by feeling. So yeah, you can stick a knife in, just like you would a muffin or a cake. So my knife came out clean, so it's good.
So my bowl was almost full of liquid, so I do recommend using a bigger container if you have. And then what am I doing? Am I just leaving this to sit? Is it ricotta?
Yeah, just let it hang out in your strainer.
Okay. And a reminder for everyone about these crackers. They're going to be baked again.
Yeah, they're twice baked. And then you're going to get a nice baking sheet out, or a cookie sheet is fine if that's what you have. You can put a piece of parchment down.
So we are at the hour mark. We're definitely going to tie things up for everybody and won't just abandon you. But for anyone that does have to leave now, that has, kids they have to attend to or other things, what else do they need to know from?
Yeah, I'll just quickly show everybody how to. So my little mini loaf is quite warm, but I do have a really good bread knife, so I'm not too worried. But ideally, you want to let these cool a little bit. And so look at that. That's what your crackers are going to look like. So pretty. So you can see the pumpkin seeds and the cranberries, black sesame. And then if anyone has to leave, Jana, you're going to be sending the recipe. You're going to put these onto your baking tray. Just line them up as close as possible. Even if they're touching a little bit, it's not that big of a deal. And then you're going to turn your oven down to 300. There we go. And then you're going to bake them for another 10 minutes, okay? And then you're going to take them out. You're going to flip them over and bake them for another 10 minutes. Keep an eye on them. Make sure they're not, everybody's oven is a little bit different. If you feel nervous, set your timer for 7 minutes and check them. But they should be, when they're baked, they should be nice and golden brown. But that's what they look like unbaked. And you could totally eat them right now. They're so good. But so I'm going to just put these, I'm going to keep slicing. So for any of you that have to sign off, you're in good shape. Because all you have to do is, again, I'll just repeat that. You're putting them on a baking sheet. You turn the oven down to 300. You're baking for 10 minutes on one side. Pull it out, flip them over the tong, and bake again for 10 minutes. Okay? And then let cool. They should be nice and crispy. If you don't bake them long enough, they won't be crispy, which is fine. But typically, we want our crackers to be nice and crispy.
And you said, they do get easier to cut if you let them cool down. So for those of us who aren't in a rush, maybe you could even leave them overnight and double bake them tomorrow. Is that a possibility?
Yeah, you could just put them in the fridge. So ideally, if they came out of the fridge nice and cool, then they're really easy to cut.
Okay. And then in terms of the ricotta, I mean, sometimes we see pictures of people, they're squeezing it with the cheesecloth. Should I be squeezing it, or do we just let it do its own?
So that depends on what you're using your ricotta for. If you're just using your ricotta to put on crackers and you want it nice and soft and spreadable, then I wouldn't squeeze it too much, and I wouldn't let it drain for too long, just like maybe 5 minutes.
Okay.
If you want to use it for a pasta dish or your lasagna, then yeah, you can squeeze that excess moisture out. You could even, if you want it really firm, you can squeeze the excess water and then sort of tuck the what do you call it, the meshy stuff.
The cheesecloth.
Cheesecloth.
Right.
We're making here cheese, right? Just tuck it over and then put a plate and a heavy can of something and let it hang out for a bit. And then you're going to get a really firm ricotta. Okay. And that's kind of basic for any kind of fresh cheese that you make. That's sort of the trick. You could let it hang out like that for a day if you really wanted firm for whatever you're making. Okay.
Yeah, mine definitely has a nice texture to it, a texture that I like in ricotta, and I think I'm going to be eating it sooner rather than later. So I guess that's probably about time to wrap up. If anyone has any last minute questions, you can submit them now. Otherwise, I hope we'll see you on so once the cheese has been strained, can we add herbs and or spices to the cheese? And if so, are there any you'd recommend? That's a great question.
Yeah, so I was going to mention, I can't believe how fast that hour went, but we have a restaurant in Edmonton, and I always try to recreate his whipped ricotta. He makes a goat ricotta, and then he takes the ricotta. Well, I don't actually know how he does it, but I've tried to figure it out. And you just puree it in a food processor, and you'll get a totally different, luxurious, smooth, whipped ricotta. And then he puts chopped rosemary, finely chopped rosemary, and a olive oil and Malden sea salt. And then they serve that on crostini. Delicious. If anybody follows Food 52, I actually made this little dish with chickpeas, and there's capers and lemon. This just came out of the oven a little while ago, olives, and then it says to top it with crumbled feta or ricotta. So I'm going to use my ricotta to top this little ensemble.
That looks delicious. And Rebecca McKenzie is asking, how do you store the finished crackers?
You can just put them in a container with a lid, and they'll last for a long time, or a Ziploc. I've just tucked them into a Ziploc, but keep them sealed. And yeah, they'll last for a long time because they're really crispy. And the ricotta probably will last about a good week in the fridge. Maybe not quite, but check it. But definitely, 2 or 3 days, up to a week, depending. Yeah, just in a covered container.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Any other questions from anyone as we are wrapping up? Well, we will be checking on the Facebook page, and I hope you'll follow Cindy. You can find her at Cindy Lazarenko on Instagram, and making the most delicious food, sometimes out of the dregs of the cupboard, sometimes fancier than that. And Cindy, I just so appreciate this, and this smells so good. I can't wait to try this ricotta. And yeah, thank you all for joining us on this grand experiment. The plan right now is to do soap making next time, which I'm a little bit afraid of. That would be 2 weeks from tonight. And it's definitely has a danger element. Plans for the future include embroidery, collage making, and of course, again, if any of you have ideas or things you'd like to learn, please let us know, as this is something we're trying, and we'll see how it goes. Thank you so much, Cindy. It was such a pleasure to see you.
Thanks, Jana. Thanks, everyone. I hope everyone had success.
Thank you. Have a great night, everybody. Take care.